I am the world's best auto glass installer for 2023. The competition is nerve-wracking. Procedurally, I'm there. There's just a couple hiccups in the past that prevented me from winning. The Sika reps made sure that every need I had was met. That kind of support means a lot to somebody who's in the throes of competition. I use SikaTac Ultimate because it has high viscosity, beautiful gunability, and it's just the best product on the market. Everything that I've ever wanted from a urethane manufacturer has been provided with Sika.
Real-time marketing is designed to save you thousands of dollars in marketing and software costs while significantly growing your business. From your brand reputation and social efforts to lead generation from call tracking and live chats to inter-office texting, real-time marketing combines it all into one command center to own and organize all your marketing data. Welcome to your new headquarters for marketing technologies and lead tracking. Welcome to Real-Time Marketing. It's time to take command of your brand.
Introducing AirPro Diagnostics' revolutionary calibration technology, Augie. AirPro Diagnostics' latest innovation is a game changer in forward-facing camera ADAS calibrations. Augie is a wireless compact device that allows you to calibrate vehicles anywhere. AirPro has created a theater-like environment to digitize and miniaturize static ADAS targets and present them to the forward-facing camera exactly as required by vehicle manufacturers. Find out how required calibrations can be simplified. Order your Augie today.
Welcome to Shatterproof, the Auto Glass Journey for Independence podcast. This week's episode, the importance of auto glass technician training and certification with guest host Shauna Davis of Kaizen Glass Solutions. If you haven't already liked our podcast, click on the subscribe button below and also take a moment to like this episode. So anytime we update the content, you'll be the first to get access to all of this great media and industry information. So with that, let's put on our thinking caps and get into the episode with your host, Gary Hart, and guest host, Shauna Davis.
Hey everybody, it is Gary with Shatterproof, the Auto Glass Podcast. Today, we are grateful to have Shauna Davis, Kaizen Glass Solutions. Shauna, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. Well, we were just talking, we're looking forward to the eclipse. So
Yes.
Obviously viewers watching this or listening to it will have already either passed end of days or we're all still fine and still in the glass industry at the end of the day. So that's how I'm looking at things today for what it's worth. Certainly appreciate you we appreciate you being here today. And thank you very much for your hospitality when we were just out there, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. We really had a great experience while we were there. We love your facility. We love that it's out in a distraction-free zone, if you will.
Yes.
Which is nice because some of the other classes that we travel to, there is a whole distraction universe during the day, but also at the end of the day, because a lot of students know that they have an escape to somewhere. Like, there's some attraction right outside the venue, so to speak. And yours is nicely placed. Tell me just real quick, how did you arrive at that location and what really made that location, other than maybe economic circumstances, but overall, what attracted you to what is it, Hutto, Texas,
It's
out there?
Hutto, Texas.
Hutto, okay.
Hutto, Texas.
I'll get
yes.
it one day.
Yeah, it's fine. Go Hippos. So how I arrived at putting our training center in Hutto is, I'm a big believer in like living close by to where you work, because you spend more of your hours during the day at work than you do at home typically, unless you're hybrid or at home working. So I wanted something that was really close and convenient for me to be able to get to when I need to, as far as support for our classes or, anything that's going on there. And I love that it's centrally located, like right off of a main tollway. That city is booming. It's just, north of Austin. It's not so far remote, and there are some venues and area attractions and stuff. So there are
No,
things
absolutely.
to do.
And
It's not
I believe
cornfields.
I paid for about a foot of the road with the tolls just in and out of there. The Hertz bill came and I'm like, that's more than the rental car for the day. But without it, there's no getting around easily, because everybody tends to be on those frontage roads, which are the mini freeway. And that's why I was glad just to pay that levy toll fee and just zoomed in and out of there.
Well, it's our fastest highway in Texas. So you can go 85 miles an hour. You'll get there fast. It's good.
I mean, I stayed in Round Rock, so it was easy. It was a quick commute. But obviously, as you get closer to downtown Austin and then heading towards the airport, it just turns into a real mess, depending on the hour of the day, and construction too. Like, I still don't understand why states do construction when they know we're going home or going to work.
Or build the roads before you build all the houses and apartment complexes and the business development.
Right, and your area got a big influx of all the people from Southern California that were looking for an alternative location to live during COVID. So it was good to see that there was some Californication there, if you will. I felt that West Coast vibe for a second, and then it just went right back to Texas for what it's worth. So what got you into the auto glass industry, and how long ago was that?
This is my 22nd year in the auto glass industry, and I kind of started by chance. I worked as a temporary employee as a receptionist and worked my way up, ultimately becoming a global sales and marketing director, and did that for 21 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, by chance.
And that was
a
with
temporary
Equalizer,
job
right?
that became a passion and a career,
And that was with Equalizer.
Correct.
Yeah. And so in your role there, I mean, you saw how tools happened year over year, decade over decade of just how the industry changed for technicians and their livelihood. And we know Equalizer has their own training, Auto Glass University, and there's a couple others that have sprung up, with Auto Glass University, I believe, being the oldest in our industry. Bob Brannick wrote the book.
Right, the textbook, of course.
Yeah, because everybody writes a book now. I've got too many of them, and they're too thin. People would go, "Oh, he wrote 2 pages. He called it a book and charged me $19.99." But over the last, I'd say, 10 years, the Independent Glass Association has noticed an emphasis on safety, which then goes with training. But it seems like there's still a disconnect in our industry between the two when it comes to insurance companies and consumers at large, if you will. And I know sitting through a couple of days of your training, seeing your students and what they're doing, they're absolutely being taught and armed with the best practices for safety and that consciousness when they're out there, even their own personal safety, gloves, glasses, those types of things. But what do you think our biggest issue in the industry with getting consumers and insurance companies to understand we do have a mechanism in the industry, the Auto Glass Safety Council, but more so how we tout educational institutions like yours? How can we break these barriers, in your opinion?
I think it starts at the consumer level. They're creating the demand. They have the vehicles that we have to work on. They're working with insurance companies, and they don't know enough about what to ask for from their provider or from the person that they're calling for that service. And so I think to break some of those barriers, it really has to happen at the consumer level. I know if it's been my job for the past 21 years when I first went through the old Auto Glass Technical Institute when it was ran by the NGA. One of the most eye-opening things was I didn't know that windshield was supposed to keep me safe. I thought it was just for keeping the wind out of my hair and all of that. So since I learned that, it's been my mission of anybody I encounter that we talk about glass or cars or whatever, and it comes up, it's my duty to educate them about who to use for their windshield replacement and how serious it is and how, important it is too.
Yeah. And, and I've seen that across different mediums. I think one of the things that frustrates the IGA is getting the right message out with like how important the windshield, but all of the glass is to the structural integrity of the vehicle. And unfortunately, right. I've seen numbers that say, well, it's 15%, it's 70%. I mean, and everything in between, which as a consumer, you go, well, I went to this website and it says something. I go to this website, it says something different. And then as independent glass shops in the industry, one of the fortunate things we do have is the 800-pound gorilla who does this nationwide advertising, who has done a great job for all of us when
Absolutely.
It comes to especially recalibration these days. But even in their own marketing, you never hear anything about safety. It's always like, we're going to get you back on the road and we're out there, and creepy guy is at your children's dance recital going, I'll take care of your windshield right now. But they never lean in on anything about safety. Right. They don't tout
the
it. And even though,
Yeah,
they have their own program, but it's this odd that they don't do anything about it. And then you go to their website, you never see safety, and you never see any of those, things about the efficacy of the glass in your vehicle in certain collision situations. And I know from time to time, a lot of glass shops too will post on social media, oh, look, I just installed this windshield 2 weeks ago and the car rolled and all the occupants were fine. There's a tough correlation there to say, well, was it your glass installation or was it speed as a factor? Occupants were wearing seat belts. They didn't wrap themselves into a telephone pole or a guardrail. I think sometimes too, it's a stretch that auto glass shops will extend their safety capabilities to say, look at us. But the reality is maybe it wasn't, because as an industry, we don't have a cohesive message to put out there. So when, I mentioned the Auto Glass Safety Council. So your organization is AGSC recognized,
accredited,
certified?
Yeah, accredited. Yeah.
Accredited. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're also associate members of them too.
And just kind of for the audience, what does that process look like? Like you had to give them documents, prove that you just aren't charging students for nothing. A lot of shops don't understand this pay to play, which is pay to show that you are accredited, just as if shops right now are questioning, why should I join the AGSC and be audited?
Yeah.
So what was that process like?
Well, I mean, the process is pretty straightforward. There's the biggest thing is that there's not enough training going on, and it's such a high demand and such an important aspect of everything, especially these days with all of the technology, everything that's going on. So it's a pretty straightforward process. They make it pretty simple, for companies like me to be able to register their company as far as making their program accredited. And I think that has a lot of clout with it, to the point of what does that mean for the technicians coming, to these classes and paying to play, to continue their education or start out the right way, get the proper education instead of learning the completely wrong way from, seasoned veterans that maybe didn't have that, information back then. Again, I think that it comes back to educating the consumer. If my mother didn't know anything about it, I would want her to know, to go to some place that is certified, that they care about what they're doing, they do it properly, they're keeping all of their customers safe, in their vehicles as they work on it. But they don't know that. So the consumers just don't know that. And I think that association in general should do a better job of advertising that, not even just on the glass side of things, but on the collision side and all of these, other branches of that automotive industry.
Yeah. And yeah, too, just the students that I had the opportunity of spending time with at your facility, they were all eager to go out there and say safety, 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 and differentiate themselves in the market. And you're in a tough market because Texas, Arizona, Florida, Colorado, those tend to be markets where you can go out any day of the week and find somebody willing to put a windshield in for $150.
Right.
And from time to time, those people will post their work on social media, and you're like, you really, everybody piles in, this and that, and look at this, but it doesn't seem to phase those individuals. And I know, like, as those students were going through your course all week, and Jason's teaching them all the great things that they should know, I know in the back of their heads, they're like, okay, we're leaving here this week, but Monday I have to go install glass on my own. I know I could reach out to Shauna or Jason. I can lean in on my classmates. But now the process for them going forward is they got that hands-on training. They're out there now. They have your support. Now, how do they position themselves with the Auto Glass Safety Council? Do you auto-enroll them or say, this is the certification?
Yeah, so,
how do they get accredited?
Well, I do give them information about the association and what that means. And we kind of go over just like what I just mentioned.
Right.
They're test linked. So whenever they do complete our course, they get the exam to become a certified technician with the Auto Glass Safety Council. And that's inclusive with their tuition through our Auto Glass program.
Very good. That's great. I mean, for these technicians that are out there going, I'm worried about the process and I don't have time to figure it out. That's a really good deal. And it's not costing them extra in the scheme of things.
No, and I think that it's important of just stressing the message. That's what we want people to come to do things the right way and learn things the right way, whether they're starting out on that right foot or they're, having to retrain themselves, on the information that we're providing them. And I think that it has to go hand in hand, like we're preaching, we're a, accredited training facility and all of that. I know I get busy, at things when I leave a seminar, I don't remember to go do this extra piece, on my own. So if I can provide, all of the answers for them and all they have to do is open their email and be able to click on that link to take that test and really, connect, complete the full circle of why they came to us in the beginning, I want to be able to provide that for them.
Sure. And just the demographics so far of students, are you finding it's more new students coming into the industry, or is it a mix of existing technicians just looking for a leg up?
Honestly, it's a little bit of all of it. So I would say it's more on the collision side, people wanting to get into glass or the calibration piece, and they have to do the glass part in order to do that. But then it's also industries like the PDR, the dent, repair, detailing, people that are touching some aspect of glass in their everyday life, in their business. And, they want to add that on and they want to know how to do it properly. And then we also have entrepreneurs too. I think there was 2 of those, that you met, and one of them did a little bit of windshield repair, had a smaller windshield repair business. And then the others were from the PDR crowd.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the gentlemen that were entrepreneurs, if you were, it is overwhelming if you're just getting into the industry. And even if you start on that repair end, replacement's a totally different beast, as we know, the tools, the prep, the differences between everything. And they were a little bit overwhelmed, but what I was happy to see is how eager they were to want to start off with all the right stuff first, and not look to cut corners. None of them complained about cost. When I dropped that, hey, you better have $20,000 to $25,000 at your reserve ready to go, it didn't really faze them at all. And and two, you talk about collision, PDR, all of these, like, I call them sister industries, if you will, who all have their own associations. They also have their own educational. You're right. Yeah. Tracks. And there's all these things that occur that auto glass guys, and maybe we call them the OGs, are the ones going, well, why are tinters now to stay out of our industry? We never went to do tint, But at the same time, if you look over the storied history of auto glass shops, they all did something with regards to an item that wasn't their core competency. And especially like up in Canada. In Canada, you can get a tonneau cover, have your winter and summer tires changed, have your oil changed. Glass shops do weird stuff up there. Right. So do glass shops in the US, and I'm sure other parts of the world as well. And it all comes back to like, okay, so tinters, what's their organizations look like for certification? And a lot of them just lean in, oh, I'm 3M or I'm whatever certified. But again, there's that whole like, how do you treat the customer vehicle? Are you presentable? Are you safeguarding the vehicle? Are you also ensuring the safety of the occupants of the vehicle? Because if you dark out the vehicle and it's against the state law, or there's those things you got to look at. And I'm just not picking on tinters. I'm sure I'll get like some tinters going, you're wrong about this. Not in the tint industry. It's okay. But the requirements, that hands-on training, at least those coming to your organization for accreditation, are like, you know what, I'm used to this, which is it's great. But one of the things that really impressed me when you came out with your curriculum is you just didn't lean in on the auto glass side.
Correct.
The recalibration, flat glass, there's a lot of different programs you have in there. What was your why behind offering this full curriculum, if you will, like a true college? Like you got something for everybody there.
Yeah, and more to come too. We're still working on more things. So, for many, many years of all of, the people that I've met, the customers I've helped, I've always been a resource that they call on me, whenever they need something, as a training or a tool or a person or a company, any of those. And I've been asked for all of these programs or information about where I can go to get this, this kind of training or whatever for many years, over my whole tenure. And I wanted to provide an outlet, an independent outlet of anybody that's not tied to a manufacturer or, a glass company or whatever, and especially including the flat glass stuff. I wanted to provide an independent outlet for people to come and make it accessible and flexible for them to learn what they need to learn. And so that's kind of where it started. And then, it just keeps adding more. Obviously, I have a long list of things. Attending classes, coming soon for that, a CSR class. You kind of touched on it just a little bit ago about how to present yourself that can correlate with the CSR, but there's also a whole business aspect of that again, like this could, as you mentioned, this could really become a trade school, like come to us, we're going to help you be successful with whatever whatever you're needing, we want to provide for you.
Sure. Yeah, well, and that's so refreshing to hear, and that's one when you made the first announcements, and I was hearing rumbling on the streets. The first thing in the back of my mind was someone at your last employer was not giving you the runway to complete this big vision, which has even frustrated me as I've gone to different educational institutions or businesses, if you will. It's always amazed me that in 5 days we're covering one subject in the industry, and then it's like, okay, see you later.
Okay, bye. Yeah.
But the thing is, we all know now, 6 out of 10 cars are going to need recalibration. Right. So you just can't expect somebody I know if I say this, never mind, I'm just going to say it. Calibration's not that hard, depending on the tool that you decide and you choose on, because it comes down to a couple different ones: the efficacy, the size, the targeting, and then it's support. There's some tool manufacturers, I see people all day long on social media, I'm calling the support number and it just hangs up on me, or I've been in the queue for an hour, does anybody talk to me? And then on the other hand too, there are vehicles that if you haven't done them a few times to understand the weirdness of target setups or distance measurements or things of that nature, that you could be there. But the point is, you're being trained for taking glass out, and that glass is going to require recalibration. But you know what? We're not doing that in this class. You'll have to learn that somewhere else. And that is frustrating that they don't bake in or they don't have the thought to have baked it in even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we were at 3 to 4 out of cars. 30-40% of the time you still needed it, and what's going on. Plus, we know, just look at tools in the last 5 years. Setting and removal tools have jumped in different applications, and where is the training for that? And I'm sorry, YouTube videos, the University of YouTube is not that good, because otherwise I'm sure you would just put your content online and said, just pay the money, never come to the middle of nowhere, Texas. And I don't mean that as bad.
It's not that bad.
I just kept picturing myself. Now I understand how tornadoes have plenty of run up. There's just nothing to stop them. And just out of curiosity, not to go off track here, we noticed the roofs of the houses there are oddly built compared to the rest of the world. Like
really?
they have a I don't know. Yeah, they look like gnome houses. They have a different construction, and we were wondering if it's because of hurricanes and tornadoes, or
well, we don't get hurricanes. We get probably the wind and the rain from some hurricanes, but tornadoes usually happen north of us in a city called Gerald, and they're really flat out there. So I don't know about the construction of the home.
Okay, I was because we were going around going, every house has the same roof.
I'll have to check it out now.
Type of construction, and we were like, maybe it's so the wind goes over it, or when hail comes down. Because I got to tell you that the last night when we left your place, the radio and TV people kept saying, probably hail tonight. And I unfortunately was at a hotel where there was no covered parking, and I'm like feverishly going through my rental agreement going, what's it say about hail? What's it say about hail? Where's an office complex around here I could go park?
Car wash.
Yeah, exactly. Something weird like that. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. And definitely, if you do find an answer on the roof thing, message me on that, because it's a weird thing, and we didn't think to look it up on Google.
Out here.
You never know. You say never, and then look, it's still winter in Arizona for what it's worth.
Yeah, we have corn and cows out there, but by the time that you get back, I'm sure it'll be nothing but more houses and more businesses, and it's growing tremendously. So,
or the cows will have their own houses.
I know.
You never know.
Hopefully that's the case. I'd rather that than the other.
So when we talk about certification, so we technicians, glass shops definitely should be sending their employees back to training if maybe it's been years, maybe it's been never. It's still to this day, I'll see people proudly displaying the NGA certification.
Hey, I display mine.
I know, but in the relevancy of the NGA in the auto glass industry, it means nothing to a consumer. And again, consumers are going through and they're like, well, this NGA, and even if they click on it, they're going to find zero about auto glass.
Right.
And also too, proudly saying, 2008, some shops have 2008. I'm like, okay, so over 13 years ago, 14 years ago was this, and here we are today. So what have you done since then? Oh, it's all on the street. I've learned it. So definitely shops going back to it, but consumers, we opened up with, that's where this needs to go. What do you think it will take for the auto glass industry to effectively get that message to consumers?
I think definitely starts with advertising. I think that's where the safety aspect of that resonates with people, and they're for their families, and they don't want to choose somebody that's not accredited or not certified or something like that. Obviously there's going to be those people that are going to price shop, and then they're going to get what they're going to get. But I think if you create the demand, it's just like selling tools or glass or whatever. You create that demand. You build more cars, so I get to sell more glass for that car. Same thing with tools. Like, you want to be able to show that off with how that could save their time or their back, or maybe it's something that is revolutionary. Of how to do a job that they've been doing forever. but you create the demand with the people that are using it, right? And that's where I think advertising, obviously we can get into the law side of things, which is way, way more than, what I know at this moment. But, I think that could definitely be a bigger push later on. But I think just in general, the consumer awareness, there's got to be a service bulletin out there for them.
Right. Well, and I'll pick on a recent announcement. So you've got now Driven Brands who has Driven Claims. And so now Driven Claims is obviously, set up to go hand in hand with Auto Glass Now and all their other acquisitions they made. Obviously up in Canada with Uniban and that whole monster of their sub franchises and whatnot. Obviously, these are all self-serving things. But when we talk about TPAs, the things that Auto Glass shops here, and this is one of the points I brought up to your students, was you need to create like the VIP warranty program. Or I have the VIP program, which means you get this warranty, you get free chip repairs, and oh, by the way, it's done by accredited technicians for the overall safety and value. And that's something that I always find interesting is if you listen to the recordings from the TPA side, and obviously haven't heard any from Driven Claims, so nobody jump out there going, what have you heard about that? I'm just saying we're putting them now in that boat where they're leaning in on the same sales tactics as SGC when they go to insurance companies, which is warranty, and that's about it. Oh, and price. But you don't ever hear Safelite telling the consumer on the phone when they're on a third-party call with the glass shop about this shop not being safe, or they're not on our safety list, or we don't know that they're accredited. It just comes back down to the warranty. And there are hacks out there that all day long, they may actually warranty their jobs, and their jobs may never leak or have an issue. So the thing that I see happening is consumers are finicky, and I've always looked at it this way, and maybe you agree or don't disagree. If I need to take my vehicle in for some issue, I take it back to the dealership. And I'm just assuming that they have accredited technician because it's Chevy. Yeah. you would hope there. And then back in the day, it used to be ASE. I remember growing up, my dad was like, son, always make sure you take it to an ASE certified technician. I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but okay, I'll do it, And over time, you would see their logo pasted around town at different, mechanical shops, even brake shops. There's a lot that got in on that. And then it seems like you didn't see that anymore because it didn't matter, because consumers' bias is, I don't care as long as my vehicle's being taken care of and I get that warranty. The warranty seems like that trumps everything, including safety. And it's frustrating because how, as an industry, and I mean automotive aftermarket, can we all come together and have that like safety montage commercial, if you will? Somebody with collision repair, a DRP shop. An oil shop saying, when you bring it in, we're going to make sure that we tighten your stuff back up. Why? We care about safety. We don't want you to be driving down the freeway, your car stops, you get rear-ended by a semi, lights out. It's one of those things. And I think, too, a big part of that is, though, since most claims for auto glass start with insurance, that it's the insurance, it's our job to educate the insurance companies on this point. But then it comes back down to what we shall call the separation of TPA and state, if you will, is that the largest TPA has their own safety program. They've only, placated the industry or themselves by being part of the standards committee, but at the same time, they don't adhere to that. They adhere to parts of it, but they're not a formal member. So now we've got these two diametrically opposed opinions on how we should put safety to it. But I believe that this would be an advantage for independent glass shops to constantly now bring up on the phone when they're on a third-party call, and even prior to that with the insured on the line, letting them know, hey, warranty you're going to get everywhere, but we want to ensure that you understand we're accredited, our technicians are accredited, and that's what matters for your family. What's your feelings on that?
Well,
I know.
That's
and spotlight.
Again, it's the same answer. It's all about the education. I do feel like they're, again, we're getting into a lot of things that, are a little bit bigger than just you and I, but I think that we're on the right track by talking about it and putting it out there and trying to do something about it. It all starts with one kind of mentality, but I think that there definitely needs to be reform on how things are structured, who's involved in, some of these committees, or, who's, what are we doing there? Is it just internal, or is it something that we're really pushing on the insurance side to advocate for that safety, piece, that accreditation, that certification of who to use, who they refer to, right? And that's something that I feel like when people come through any of our courses, we definitely kind of beat that in, of how to market yourselves, for that. They always ask, what does that get me? What does that do? And I'm like, right now, like, hopefully in the future, it's going to be a lot more, but it's something that starts with you. And it's just like 21 years ago, it's been my mission ever since I learned about the safety of what a windshield and the structure integrity that you have in your vehicle. It's been my mission to educate anybody that I encounter on the consumer level, and obviously on the technician side too, and businesses and stuff. But it all starts there, as far as all of the other things of, how the committees and the members that work, that's a little bit more than, that's going to take some time and a lot of reform, I feel like. And I think that it has to be united, we all have to be on board. Everybody's going to have, their own opinion, but I think ultimately, what's the big picture? What is the main goal and the main mission for that organization, or for that committee, or for that group, or whatever?
Right. And it's not unpopular for me to say right now, I fundamentally believe that certain aspects of the Auto Glass Safety Council are broken. Despite, I know the effort I put in to attend the committees that I am a part of. And sadly, one can't be on all the committees and keep their head straight. I tend to focus more right now on the important ones, which are the standards and ADAS. Now, I'm starting to feel that my time maybe on the standards is nearing an end, but then all of a sudden ADAS and those things suck me back in because we're adding that to the overall standard. But I'm frustrated with the marketing side of it and just what the benefit of an AGSC membership's message is. And quite honestly, and I would challenge anybody who's been on the marketing committee that has no skin in the game of ever dealing with true marketing for their organization. Like, they're just like, yeah, I've been part of a glass shop, I'm in the glass industry, therefore I'm qualified to understand marketing of it. And the messaging of it is exactly some of the points that you brought up are, okay, as a glass shop, what is the general message? Where do we go for resources? And I can tell you right now, your pages and your views and people who are liking you and Shatterproof's podcast, even the IGA, we surpass the likes of the Auto Glass Safety Councils like YouTube and other social media by tenfold. And you start to wonder, if safety and the AGSC are the key component, the heart of our industry, what are we missing here? And fundamentally, then it brings us back to who are the people behind the organization and are on these committees. And that's the real challenge is people like you and I are disruptors. I believe you're a disruptor.
Well, no, I guess that's a compliment.
Well, it is. You're disrupting the market with a model for training. And like you said, you've got things that you haven't even released, but when you do, it will make such a profound effect on just like the CSR part of it. When I'm standing there and I'm like, so how would you answer the phone when you're on the road? The guy's like pointing to his Motorola earbud. I'm like, yeah, so here's the thing. That's not professional. You're pulling glass, you're prepping the job, and you're also answering the phone at the same time. It's not going to work. It's only going to get you by. And then you're using your personal phones, but all those things add up to, again, the ability to to let the customer know about the safety, the warranty, the advocacy.
Right.
But then we move back on. We can't ask all of these glass shops in the industry to give up 1 or 2 times a year on their dime to travel to the East Coast all the time and sit in meetings for 2 and 3 days. You lose 4 days, no matter who. If you're coming from the West Coast, you lose 4 days to go to these things. But then to get their opinion, I'm frustrated with the fact that this in-person thing can't change to be hybrid. At the beginning of this, we talked about, your area, you're a hybrid worker, you're not.
Yeah.
And it comes back to it is, I think more glass shops would be willing to participate, and we could tap some really good marketers, some good people with ideas if they were allowed to participate in a hybrid meeting in person and whatnot. And I hope anybody from the AGSC is listening. I'm not slamming the group or the association. I pay dearly a year in my time and my passion to be a part of it. And I truly believe in it. But we need to get to a point, because otherwise, Shauna, what you've done and what the IGA does will mean nothing, because we can't get that organization to move, and get their message out there, which then at the end of the day, that I believe then turns into a consumer message more than an industry message. Because once we get critical mass on safety and auditing, and I've heard some things. It was a recent podcast where I believe Deb Levy was on it, and she was talking about how an auditor was out at a glass shop, and it took them it was the third job where they noticed or discovered that the adhesive was expired. And I scratched my head going, the third job, that wasn't caught on the first job? It's things like that where what? I think the industry needs to know what that looks like. And then what does a company have in place to them that outside of normal AGSC auditing can be done? And I think institutions like yours are perfect for that, because that gives them at least the audit from the technician level. What things you can do better.
You asked or made a statement a little bit ago about continued education. What do they do after that? So they, to become a member or certified technician, there's a renewal process with that. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to have continued education courses. Maybe it's not so in depth, but maybe let's come in and work on some latest cars and do a refresher on, whatever that is. I think that there's a huge opportunity for that, especially if it coincides with their renewal, if they're wanting to renew their certification for their shop, for their technicians or whatever. I think that really would coincide with everything. And again, you're creating that complete circle, we're here, come to us or be a member of this or come to an accredited training program, but we gotta complete it. It's just, taking care of your customers. Like when somebody calls me, their number is saved in my phone, I'm going to contact them again or me. And that support never ends, It's kind of creating that community with the one message. We want to educate. We want people to do the job the right way. We all want to send the same message to our consumer. We want those consumers to know why they want to choose those companies or that technician and stuff. So I think it all starts with that. There's huge opportunity for change and growth and, bringing everything full circle and bringing everybody together. Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question.
Well, no, yeah, you did. So while we're on this track, let's kind of just venture down the rabbit hole for a moment. Do you feel that accreditation should be tied to the ability to purchase from distribution in our industry?
I do.
Excellent. And I not just the glass and adhesive, but also tools.
Tools get a little tricky, but yes. I mean, I think that there's got to be. It's the answer is yes, ultimately. Okay. But we could dive into this rabbit hole where there's lots of legs and branches that come with that, where you limit the supply. Because ultimately, just like what I've said many times, I don't care where you're getting it from. I just want you to know, that you're doing it the right way and that you have the right tools for what you need to do it. So if you're limited because you're not, like you're starting out and there's a process in place and all of that, I think there's got to be some gray area when it comes to that. But yes, I think definitely on the glass supplier, like the main, meat, the urethane, the glass distribution, I think that there's got to be some checks and balances there, because we're creating a more professional workforce, and we can thank the technology for that too. And so if the cars are advanced, by making more, people more professional and caring about what they're doing and paying attention about what they're doing on that car, then again, we got to kind of go backwards and, do some checks and balances on how they're getting started, right? And why and how. Yeah.
Well, and the tool part I get, because I always like to use I have a Home Depot analogy, which is right. Okay. So many years ago, if you wanted to weld and do things on a professional level, there is a whole accreditation and whatnot, and where you bought your supplies, you had like the welding supply shop for everything required you to show your business license, your certification, everything. But then, Tractor Supply Company, Home Depot, all these companies now, all of a sudden, you can walk in and get the Junior Lincoln kit and get your own welder's helmet and your gloves, and you look like you're doing everything. You've seen 2-3 YouTube videos, and all of a sudden, you're building things. And some people aren't building things for their own home use. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But a lot of them said, I'm a welder now. And they're going out in those industries and undercutting. So the tools became available at those places. Now, in our industry, I would venture to say is where would our tools become available, I guess, at automotive supply stores, maybe a Walmart or Target's automotive center. It would be weird to walk in and see glass, racks and extractor tools on there. But to your point, the adhesives and definitely the glass distribution should be waking up to this. And I had a very, I'll call it a passionate discussion with one of the top 3 wholesale distributors in the US about this point. And when they said, well, we aren't going to lose business just for this position of safety. And my response was, well, you're not going to lose business because that hack that was not accredited, that was going to buy it for you, well, if you remove their barrier of entry, a legitimate glass shop's going to get the call, get that job. And if you treat that glass shop right and they're a good customer for you, they will buy from you. So the net effect is the industry doesn't lose wholesale jobs, if you will, by eliminating that. So you're fine. And that turned into, I'm still wrong. They're still going to lose money. And it was money at the end of the day. And, I said, that's sad to hear, because there are other individuals and groups out there willing to move, but it has to be a consolidated effort on it. Right. That's the difficult part. And it's only going to get worse, because we know just in the short, 4 or 5 months of this year, we've seen automotive technology now being released with regards to the auto glass, that how in the world, without training, are you going to do this on your own going forward? Because YouTube groups are, YouTube channels will only get you so far. Social media groups, maybe a little bit further. But at the end of the day, we don't want people out there ripping out, integrated LCD pillars and and sadly, too, a lot of glass shops aren't subscribing to things like ALLDATA and some of these other things that are out there to truly have the OEM repair procedures done, which I think that's something else our industry needs to lean in on, and the Auto Glass Safety Council needs to get behind, because that seems to be our arguing points in certain meetings is, well, what's the OEM say? And not one person, I'll say, well, did anybody go look up the procedure? And there's crickets in the room. Right. And then the comment is, and this is true, sometimes there is no repair procedure for glass removal. Maybe not windshield, side glass, door glass, it gets as it goes down, it gets weird. But shops need to understand there's a price to pay to play. $1,200 a year subscription saves your butt, maybe. So it's really weird. Just how do you see your organization evolving around advancement in everything? I mean, you got ADAS you're dealing with. That's a constant advancement.
Yes.
And two, just, I know Jason and others that are the instructors of a lot of this curriculum out there. Even that they must struggle to stay on top of it, because who trains the trainer?
Well, so yeah, I mean, but what's cool about what we're doing on our instructors, all of them, and there's more that's not even listed on the website, and it's growing, which is wonderful. But what's really cool about our instructors is that they're doing this job every day. They're staying active. They're just waiting for the next class to arrive. They have their own business. They have their own, company that they work for. And so they're seeing the day-to-day, things that come up. Obviously the new cars, they have access to that as they come in. But yeah, I mean, that's where it really is beneficial for us, because we're really staying current. And, on the manufacturer side, we have connections with that. We've talked to them. I've been a part of some major OE vehicle, glass program where they're trying to create the manual of how to remove and replace, the glass on their latest vehicle. And so what's really exciting about what we're doing is that we have those opportunities where those people are coming to us and saying, well, maybe we could just use you as our glass program. We can, maybe as we're setting up certified shops to work on these specific vehicles for us, we can utilize your program, because you're going to be able to teach them everything that we know and be able to kind of write the manual for us, on that aspect. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we've seen what good for these OEs for starting a program, but I think it was a little premature for some of the things they were thinking, but I'll just pick on Volvo. Only because in my universe, I am involved with a Volvo and a fleet vehicle in one of my businesses, my wife's business. And, we're on the third windshield replacement of this car. Now, the first one truly was done by a Volvo technician using the Volvo adhesive and the Volvo calibration.
Right.
The second one, not even close. And the third might as well have been done on the side of the road. It was a hack job, but again, it was bought and brought into the dealership, and we were shocked when we had wind noise, and the guy who came out here was in the 1978 Scooby-Doo van.
Oh, wow.
I introduced myself, told him who I was and who with the IGA, and he looked at me like he had never heard of it. And as we kept stopping and putting blue tape around till he found the area, when he finally found the area, his solution was, I'm just going to put more adhesive in, glue this down. And his thing was, this will be the next company's problem, to remove it now. And I was like, okay, this is just ridiculous.
Wow.
And when you have commercial insurance in Arizona, you don't get the benefit of the free windshield replacement. You're literally paying full premium, not even a deductible. So, you're still talking a $1,700 windshield on a Volvo. You would expect not this guy to come out. So shame on the OE programs, because they don't have control over their dealership level. And I know there's a lot of Ford dealerships throughout the country. I've been to some of them that they go, we don't pay attention to it. We hire the cheapest glass shop that's local to us to perform the job until there's a problem. Then we'll just go to the next one. So it's also too, the OEs, to your point, need to become more involved in the industry at all. They need to come to an Auto Glass Safety Council meeting. They need to represent themselves on the standard side if they want their own programs to work. So first is partnering with accredited organizations like your own, but also getting more involved with the industry and they have great PR departments that can sit in there and whisper in your ear, don't say this, say that. That's fine, but be there, show up at least. So any OEs out there watching, or if you're watching and you know somebody with the OE, have them watch this and get in touch with either me or just show up at Auto Glass Week for the next AGSC meetings. Just sit in the room. We're not even going to ask you to say anything, but just see what we're going through, where you as an OE could fill in 25% of the stuff where we're always going, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's just a great partnership where you're working together. It really connects the two. There's so many people, and including myself, I've said it many times, glass is typically, or auto glass is typically the stepchild, to the bigger automotive industry. It's more collision and, all the repair that's needed and the proper procedures for that. And there's not a lot of emphasis on glass. And I'm happy to say that I'm creating that voice, one of the voices to be able to bring that to the public, but also to the bigger collision automotive industry side of that through the connections or through just, people, paying attention to what's going on now and providing that flexible, easy to attend training where it's, we want you to know what you're doing. We want you to pay attention to this. And it all connects to to each other. I've had many calls from students in local trade schools saying, I'm in 2 different programs in my city and 2 different colleges, collision programs, and not one of them teach glass. Not one of them.
Well, and so when I show up at CIC
I'm glad
meetings,
you called is what my answer.
Yeah, and I show up at CIC meetings and they're like, Hart, what are you doing here? This is collision. It's the collision industry conference. I'm like, yeah, you don't realize how often more you need us than we need you.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and they look at me and I'm like, okay, so just go through your production for the last 5 days. How many times did you need glass removed and reinstalled or just needed glass installed that you didn't have the capability in staff or in-house to do it, that you relied now on your production coming from a third-party auto glass shop? And they go, oh, that's why you're here. And then I'm like, yeah. And then we'll leave and you'll forget about it. Yeah, it's that. But I'm active too. I take the IGA's role and the Auto Glass Safety Council into the collision side because it's there too at the same time. We need to let the collision industry know that they should only be working with shops that are accredited. And I believe that's something that's overlooked in general by our industry, but how often it is relied on by collision repair. Even paintless dent repair. I've seen some PDR where glass had to be removed in order for the PDR to be finished. Yeah. And now too, PDR with recalibration. And I know people are out there scratching their heads, but hit up our YouTube channel. You'll see some examples of PDR with recalibration required after it. So just to wrap everything up, the next 5 years, what do you see that head-on train looking like for the auto glass industry? Where are we evolving to? New training, new programs. What's in store for us auto glass folks?
I think everything that we talked about. I think that training is going to be a bigger emphasis. Training facilities, training outlets. I think that we'll have a bigger professional community where we're a bigger network of people that are the awareness part on the safety and can stay on top of your certifications, stay on top of like committees and education, work together for that. I think ultimately it'll be a larger professional space for us within 5 years. Yeah.
And obviously
globally, not just here, but globally.
Well, no, yeah. Well, maybe not. Let's say New Zealand, Australia don't count.
But
the whole
it's
170 total glass
shops. It's everywhere. So
yeah. Well, and too, a lot of domestic shops, North America, don't realize there's an entirely different auto glass world in Europe. Completely different numbers, different pricing. Yeah, just how you do things over there. Yeah, and training and the emphasis on it is so important. And your organization's willingness to have already looked down the road and know that you have these planned programs coming that, out of the gate, no institution. I mean, unless somebody already, bought the wing of the new, like the CSR training wing, and it's got lazy boys and VR goggles for everybody to learn or something. Yeah. It's not an overnight thing that can happen, but definitely that involvement. I certainly appreciate everything that you're doing. And what we're doing is everything about Shauna's organization is below. We've linked all of her websites. Definitely hit up those next class lists. Get your technicians out there. Even if you have a calibration system that you just bought and trained yourself on, I would double down and say, also go get trained through Kaizen, because it never hurts to have a second look at another system, different ways to do it. And in your organization, one calibration system, in my opinion, is not enough. You need 2 systems, because if you're doing in-house and mobile, there are some that do better for mobile than just in-house. And you also need to plan and do those things. And I know your organization lends that right now, that kind of like, well, how are you doing it? Where are you going to do it? So thank you very much for that and this great business you've built.
Thank you, Gary.
And we look forward to seeing your students again and coming out when I thought the weather was nice. That was, for me, it was that heavy rain.
Well, I know, at least you got to see rain.
Yeah, it was nice. And then it followed me home, and it's been that way for the last week and a half. So definitely appreciate it. Any last words before we wrap up today?
No, I appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you for having me on today, Gary.
Good deal. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing everybody jump on her website, grab those dates, lock them in, send your technicians. Austin, very easy to get to. In my opinion, much easier to get to than Dallas-Fort Worth. Dallas-Fort Worth is the bane of the airline existence, in my opinion. But when you get to Austin, very friendly, something for everybody. Definitely the class is locked in. Trainers, the establishment is great. You will get the best training possible in the industry. So lock in, get there. Look forward to seeing you again, Shauna, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, right. Same to you.
Thank you for tuning in to the importance of auto glass technician training and certification with guest host Shauna Davis of Kaizen Glass Solutions. Thank you for listening to Shatterproof, the Auto Glass Journey for Independence podcast, brought to you by the Independent Glass Association and me, Gary Hart, your host. If you haven't already liked this podcast or haven't subscribed, like this episode and hit that subscribe button. So anytime we update the content, you'll be the first to get access to all of this great media and industry information. We also want to thank the sponsors of the podcast, eDirect Glass, who's also the maker of Glass Part Match, which is free to the industry. So get your account today at www.iga.org/GPM. And Augie by AirPro, that amazing on-the-glass targeting recalibration system allowing you to work from anywhere at any time with the support you need to succeed. You can find all the links referenced in this podcast in the descriptions or comments below. Again, thank you for tuning in and supporting the Independent Glass Association so we can continue to provide quality information and educational materials for the independent automotive glass industry.